Do you have any idea what you just did? This dress is vintage Chanel, you stupid, clumsy idiot! I am so sorry, miss. I was pushed. I didn't mean to. Please, let me help. Don't touch me with your filthy hands!
That is enough, Lexi.
You have no right to treat me like this!
The crystal chandeliers of the Waldorf Astoria cast a blinding, fractured light over Manhattan's most exclusive charity gala. Near the center ice sculpture stood Marcus Vance, a man who had built his multi-billion-dollar real estate empire from the dirt up. Beside him stood his daughter, Lexi, looking every bit the heiress he dreaded she had become. She wore a custom pearl-white silk gown that cost more than most people made in a year, her posture rigid with an ingrained sense of superiority as she half-listened to a hedge fund manager drone on about offshore accounts. A few feet away, Sarah's arms trembled. She was exhausted, her feet throbbing in cheap black flats as she balanced a heavy silver tray laden with glasses of blackberry bourbon smash. As a single mother working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on in her Queens apartment, this catering gig was the difference between buying groceries or skipping meals for the week. She navigated the crowded ballroom with practiced care, keeping her eyes down, trying to be invisible among the glittering elite. "Excuse me, please," Sarah murmured, stepping around a cluster of laughing socialites. Suddenly, a man gesturing wildly with his cigar took a blind step backward, his shoulder slamming hard into Sarah. The force of the impact threw her entirely off balance. The silver tray tipped violently, and before Sarah could even gasp, a cascade of dark, sticky bourbon and crushed blackberries rained down onto the immaculate white silk of Lexi's gown. The gasp that left Lexi's mouth was loud enough to cut through the ambient chatter. As the dark stain rapidly bloomed across the expensive fabric. "Are you blind?" Lexi shrieked, her voice echoing off the marble pillars. Her face contorted into an ugly mask of pure rage as she looked down at the ruined silk, then up at the terrified waitress. "Do you have any idea what you just did? This dress is vintage Chanel, you stupid, clumsy idiot." Sarah dropped to her knees, frantically grabbing a cloth napkin from the floor and reaching out. "I am so sorry, miss. I was pushed. I didn't mean to. Please, let me help." "Don't touch me with your filthy hands," Lexi snapped, slapping Sarah's hand away so hard. "You probably couldn't afford a single thread of this dress if you worked your pathetic little catering job for the next 10 years. Look at you. You don't even belong in this building. You're completely incompetent." Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes. "Please, miss, I am begging you. I'm so sorry. I need this job. I have a little boy at home, and if I get fired over this, we won't make rent." Lexi let out a cruel, barking laugh. "And why is that my problem? Maybe if you weren't such a useless klutz, you wouldn't be begging for table scraps. You should be fired. I'm going to make sure you never work in this city again." "That is enough, Lexi." Marcus's voice didn't just carry, it boomed with the kind of rough, terrifying authority that could silence a boardroom of cutthroat executives. He stepped in front of his daughter, his expression dark with a fury so intense it made the surrounding guests take a collective step back. "Dad, look at what this trash did to my—" "Shut your mouth," Marcus growled. "Not another word. You are acting like a spoiled, entitled brat, and you are embarrassing me." Marcus turned his back on his stunned daughter and immediately knelt down on the marble floor, putting himself at eye level with Sarah. He gently placed a hand on her trembling shoulder. "Look at me," Marcus said softly, his tone completely shifting from wrath to a deep calm. Sarah slowly looked up. "I am so deeply sorry for my daughter's behavior. She has lost her mind, but you haven't lost your job. I personally guarantee it. You go to the back, get yourself cleaned up, and tell your manager Marcus Vance said your shift is done for the night with full pay and a $5,000 tip. You are going to be just fine." An hour later, the interior of Marcus's luxury SUV was completely silent, save for the hum of the engine as they glided down Park Avenue. Lexi sat in the passenger seat, her ruined dress hidden beneath a designer coat, mindlessly scrolling through social media on her phone. She didn't look up. She didn't look sorry. She just chewed her gum. Without a word, Marcus pulled the heavy vehicle over to the curb, threw it in park, and turned off the engine. The sudden quiet forced Lexi to finally look up from her glowing screen. "Why are we stopping?" she asked. "I want to go home and burn this dress." "Put the phone down, Lexi," Marcus said. "Dad, seriously, I'm over it. Can we just—" "I said put it down," he barked, finally turning to look at her. "You think you're royalty because you were born on third base? You think that dress makes you better than that woman? My mother, your grandmother, scrubbed floors in office buildings just like the one we just left. She came home with bleeding hands and a broken back, and she had to swallow the insults of rich, entitled snobs who looked right through her just so I could have a meal." Lexi let out a long, exaggerated sigh. "Dad, we've heard the rags to riches story 1,000,000 times. It has nothing to do with some careless waitress ruining my night." "It has everything to do with it," Marcus said, his voice hardening with genuine disappointment. "You humiliated a mother trying to feed her child. You acted like a monster. The universe keeps a ledger, Lexi. Karma doesn't care about my bank account, and it certainly doesn't care about yours. It always collects its debts, and when it comes for you, I won't be there to pay the bill." Lexi stared at him for a second, then scoffed, turning her head to stare out the rain-streaked window. "Whatever, Dad. Can we just go home now?" Marcus stared at the side of her face for a long moment, the heavy silence hanging between them, before he silently started the engine and pulled back out into the dark city streets. Next morning, Lexi pushed through the heavy glass doors of a trendy Soho cafe, her eyes entirely glued to the bright screen of a brand-new phone. She tapped away furiously, completely unbothered by the previous night's events. She didn't bother to step aside or weave through the waiting line. She simply expected the crowd to part for her. Instead, she walked at a brisk, determined pace directly into a solid wall of muscle. The impact was violently abrupt. Lexi bounced off the broad chest of Jax, a towering, heavily tattooed man in a faded black t-shirt who was carrying 2 iced Americanos. While Jax barely shifted his weight, the collision knocked the breath entirely out of Lexi. Her manicured fingers slipped, and the $1,000 custom phone tumbled from her grip. Time seemed to slow as it hit the polished concrete floor with a sickening sharp crack, the screen instantly splintering into a spiderweb of shattered glass. "Are you completely insane?" Lexi screamed, her voice piercing through the ambient noise of the cafe and instantly silencing the surrounding conversations. She pointed a trembling finger at the ruined device on the floor. "Look at what you just did. You clumsy, overgrown ape. Do you have any idea how much that costs? You're going to buy me a new one right now, or I swear I will make your life a living hell. Do you even know who my father is? He's Marcus Vance. He could buy this entire block and have you thrown out on the street by dinner." Jax didn't flinch. He didn't even spill a drop of his coffee. He looked down at the shattered phone, then slowly dragged his gaze up to meet Lexi's furious eyes. His expression was completely devoid of intimidation, replaced instead with a cold, cutting sarcasm. "Well, congratulations to Marcus Vance on his real estate portfolio," Jack said. "But unless your daddy can somehow bribe the laws of physics, I highly doubt he can sue me for you walking blindly into a stationary object. What exactly were you expecting? Did you think the world was just going to apologize for gravity?" Lexi's mouth opened to scream another threat, but Jax cut her off. "You strut in here with your nose in a screen, expecting the whole room to clear a path because you're wearing designer labels. Let me give you a reality check, princess. You are nothing but a hollow trust fund kid. You can wrap yourself in all the silk and diamonds your daddy's money can buy, but it doesn't change the fact that you have absolutely zero class. You're just a loud, spoiled brat throwing a public tantrum on the floor. The brutal honesty of his words hung in the air, and then the sounds started. A woman near the pastry case stifled a giggle. A man waiting for his latte openly laughed. Within seconds, soft chuckles and whispered mocking echoed from every corner of the cafe. Lexi looked around, her cheeks burning with a hot, agonizing flush. The power she always wielded like a weapon had evaporated completely. Stripped of her armor and surrounded by strangers laughing at her expense, a suffocating panic gripped her throat. She let out a strangled, humiliated sob, spun on her heel, and bolted out the glass doors, leaving her shattered phone abandoned on the concrete. Less than an hour later, the heavy oak doors of Marcus's home office slammed violently against the walls. Lexi burst into the quiet, wood-paneled room, her mascara streaked down her cheeks and her chest heaving with hysterical sobs. Marcus was seated behind his massive desk, reviewing a stack of contracts. He didn't flinch at the dramatic entrance, merely pausing his pen and looking up over his reading glasses. "Dad, you have to find him!" Lexi wailed, marching up to the desk and slamming her hands down on the polished wood. "Some heavily tattooed thug in Soho completely assaulted me. He smashed my phone, humiliated me in front of the entire cafe, and said horrible things to me. People were laughing at me, Dad. You need to find out who he is and completely ruin his life. I want him destroyed." Marcus stared at her, his expression remaining completely cold and detached. He slowly set his pen down and leaned back in his leather chair, folding his hands together. "Assaulted you? Or did you perhaps blindly walk directly into this man because you couldn't be bothered to look up from your screen?" Lexi froze. That isn't the point. He completely humiliated me." "No, Lexi, you humiliated yourself," Marcus said. "You walked into that room expecting the world to bow, and when it didn't, you threw a tantrum. Does this burning, helpless feeling in your chest feel familiar? Does it feel completely unfair and deeply embarrassing to be stripped of your dignity in front of a crowd of strangers?" Lexi stared at him, her eyes wide as the horrible realization began to dawn on her. "That is exactly the pain you inflicted on Sarah last night," Marcus continued, his words hitting her like physical blows. "You crushed a terrified, hardworking mother just because you could. I warned you about the ledger. I told you karma forces you to carry the weight of your own cruelty. You are feeling exactly what you made her feel. I am not fixing this. I am not buying you a new phone, and I am certainly not chasing down a man who simply handed you the mirror you desperately needed to look into. Welcome to the real world, Lexi. Now get out of my office and sit with it." Marcus picked up his pen and returned to his contracts, leaving his daughter standing in the center of the room in completely stunned, deafening silence.